Welcome to Arsenal, where the weapons and war machines of military history come to life. Today, we explore the B-1B Lancer, a supersonic swing-wing bomber turned precision strike workhorse, and the crews and opponents who gave it its reputation. A longer version of this feature, with fact sheets and photos, is available in the print edition, on LinkedIn or by email. You can also find more articles, podcasts, and resources at trackpads.com.
Arsenal is the Friday feature of Dispatch United States Military History magazine, and the B-1B story is especially tied to the people who lived inside the machine. It spent years as a Cold War nuclear bomber before finding its defining combat role in Afghanistan and Iraq. That transformation begins in a dark cockpit over eastern Afghanistan, where a jet built for one kind of war is being used to support troops in another.
The crew has been awake for hours before anyone touches the bomb release controls. Far below, the mountains are jagged shadows under the stars, broken by tracers and brief explosions. Up high, the air is smooth, but the interphone is busy with clipped voices. A joint terminal attack controller on the ground talks the bomber onto a target, his voice tight but controlled as enemy fighters close on a pinned patrol. In the cockpit, radar scopes, targeting pod images, and a moving map turn the valley below into a wall of green and gray light.
The offensive systems officer and defensive systems officer work in a steady rhythm, sorting coordinates, confirming friendly positions, and watching for threats. Up front, the pilot arcs the B-1B into a wide orbit that keeps its four engines ready to respond if a warning appears. The bomber has already been on station for hours and has refueled in the air, yet it still carries a deep magazine of precision-guided bombs inside its bays. The patrol below cannot see it. They hear only a distant rumble and know that something powerful has arrived overhead.
The release itself is almost quiet. Numbers, confirmations, checklists, and then guided bombs falling away into the dark. Moments later, the controller's tone changes as enemy fire slackens and the patrol begins to move again. For the troops below, the B-1B is no longer a Cold War abstraction. It is a guardian orbiting in the night, part of a much larger story about why the bomber was built and how it was remade for modern wars.
That story begins long before Afghanistan. Late in the Cold War, United States Air Force leaders worried that their long-serving B-52 bombers might not survive deep strikes into a Soviet homeland protected by modern surface-to-air missiles and fast interceptors. They needed to deliver nuclear weapons from intercontinental range and still give the crew a real chance of getting in and out alive. High-flying bombers were increasingly vulnerable, while missiles were powerful but not recallable once launched. The service wanted a manned aircraft that could be redirected, recalled, and used as a visible deterrent.
The answer was a new bomber, optimized for high-speed, low-altitude penetration. Flying fast at low level, guided by terrain-following radar and advanced navigation, a bomber could use hills, ridges, and ground clutter to reduce an enemy's reaction time. Variable sweep wings promised efficient cruise with the wings extended and high-speed dashes with them swept back. Designers were asked to combine the range and payload of a strategic bomber with the agility and survivability of a strike aircraft built to knife through defensive belts. Politics and technology pulled the program in different directions. Intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched missiles, cruise missiles, and early stealth concepts all raised questions about whether an expensive new bomber was necessary. In the late 1960s, North American Rockwell built the B-1A, a high-speed prototype that could push to roughly twice the speed of sound at altitude. It was impressive but costly, and it arrived at a moment when leaders were looking hard at alternatives.
In 1977, the B-1A program was canceled.
Modernized B-52s with cruise missiles, backed by land-based and submarine-launched missiles, would carry much of the strategic burden. Yet the need for a recallable manned bomber did not vanish. In the early 1980s, the idea returned as the B-1B, a revised aircraft that traded the B-1A's highest speed for a stronger structure, reduced radar signature, improved electronic defenses, and better performance at high subsonic speed close to the deck. By the late 1980s, 100 B-1Bs had been delivered and stood nuclear alert with Strategic Air Command.
At a glance, the B-1B is a long-range, supersonic, variable sweep-wing heavy bomber with a crew of 4 and 3 internal weapons bays. It can carry up to roughly 75,000 pounds of ordnance inside the fuselage, reducing drag and keeping the aircraft cleaner than a bomber loaded with external stores. In its original form, it was a strategic nuclear bomber for the last phase of the Cold War. After arms control agreements and the Soviet collapse, its nuclear wiring and fittings were removed, and investment shifted toward conventional weapons.
The Conventional Mission Upgrade Program gave the Lancer the interfaces, computers, and avionics needed to employ satellite-guided bombs, standoff weapons, and other modern munitions. By the time it flew over Afghanistan and Iraq, the B-1B had become a fast, long-legged conventional strike platform that could loiter with guided weapons and respond across a theater. The aircraft had not been designed for mountain firefights, but upgrades, tactics, and crew skill made it useful there.
From outside, the B-1B looks almost like an oversized fighter. The fuselage is long and narrow, the nose sharply pointed, and the wings can swing from a broad position for takeoff and cruise to a swept shape for high-speed flight. 4 afterburning turbofan engines sit in the wing roots, with intakes blended into the fuselage. On the ramp, with wings forward and flaps down, it can seem surprisingly compact for a heavy bomber. In flight, with wings swept, it becomes a sleek dart built for high subsonic or low supersonic speed.
Inside, the cockpit is a 4-person workspace built around coordination. 2 pilots sit side by side up front, with the offensive systems officer and defensive systems officer behind them on a slightly lower deck. The offensive systems officer manages navigation, targeting, and weapon release. The defensive systems officer watches electronic warfare displays, threat warnings, countermeasures, and communications. Standard callouts and interphone circuits keep the crew tied together, so that a target update, radar warning, or rule change reaches the right person quickly.
The weapons bays run along the underside of the fuselage. They can carry racks of conventional bombs, precision-guided munitions, or standoff weapons on rotating or fixed launchers. Fuel fills much of the remaining space, giving the bomber intercontinental reach with aerial refueling and the ability to orbit distant battlefields for hours. Modern targeting pods give the crew a high-resolution view of the ground, while radar, navigation systems, jammers, and towed decoys help them manage weather, darkness, threats, and fatigue during long missions.
For crews, long missions unfolded as cycles of checklists, refueling, watch rotation, and sudden bursts of intense decision-making. A sortie could cross oceans, enter a theater, wait for hours, and then become urgent in seconds when a controller passed new coordinates. Fatigue was a real factor, so standardized calls and repeated cross-checks mattered. The aircraft's technology was impressive, but the human system around it, 4 crew members managing information together, was what made precision support possible.
When the B-1B finally went to war, it did so over Iraq rather than Central Europe. In December 1998, during Operation Desert Fox, Lancers flew their combat debut in a 4-day campaign against regime targets. Crews who had trained for nuclear profiles now carried conventional bombs against air defense sites, command facilities, and barracks, proving that the swing-wing bomber could fit into a modern conventional airplane. The next trials came over Kosovo, where B-1Bs flew long missions as part of a complex NATO strike architecture. Those operations showed the value of range, payload, and sensors, but they also revealed that the aircraft was still evolving into a precision conventional platform. The real transformation came after September 11, when upgraded B-1Bs armed with satellite-guided bombs began orbiting over Afghanistan. A small number of aircraft dropped a striking share of the total tonnage in the opening months of Operation Enduring Freedom, combining heavy loads with the precision needed to support small units in broken terrain.
Kosovo also showed why the bomber's future would depend on precision rather than simply carrying a large bomb load. Dispersed targets, political constraints, weather, and the need to limit civilian harm demanded better sensors, better weapons, and faster coordination with the rest of the air campaign. The Lancer's range and payload were already useful, but the aircraft needed modern guided weapons and improved mission systems to reach its full potential in the wars that followed.
A typical mission could launch from the continental United States or a forward base, refuel en route, and arrive over a battle space where special operations teams and conventional forces were in contact. Ground controllers called for strikes on ridgelines, cave complexes, vehicles, or enemy positions closing on friendly troops. Inside the bomber, the crew confirmed coordinates, checked friendly locations, used targeting pods to visualize the ground, and released weapons in carefully timed sequences. In Iraq, similar missions saw B-1Bs move between multiple kill boxes and support units hundreds of miles apart in a single sortie.
That pattern changed how ground forces thought about heavy bombers. Instead of appearing only as strategic aircraft aimed at fixed targets, B-1Bs became responsive overwatch assets that could wait above a theater and answer multiple calls during the same mission. A single crew might support a special operations team in one valley, then move to a convoy fight or urban target set far away. The bomber's value came from combining persistence, communications, precision, and mass in one platform.
The Lancer's value came first from payload. With 3 internal bays and a deep weapons load, one aircraft could deliver the effect of several smaller jets. It could carry dozens of satellite-guided bombs, standoff weapons, or mixed loads and sequence them across multiple targets. In crowded airspace where tankers, fighters, surveillance aircraft, and command platforms all competed for time and position, that mattered. A single bomber could remain available to ground forces for hours. Its second strength was reach and flexibility. Aerial refueling allowed the B-1B to launch from distant bases, enter a theater, and stay on call. Its high subsonic dash speed and swing wings helped it reposition quickly between widely separated fights. Modern radar, navigation, targeting systems, and communications made it useful at night, through clouds and across rugged terrain. A bomber built as a strategic weapon became a tactical lifeline for patrols, convoys, and special operations teams. The aircraft also carried real burdens. Maintenance crews knew it as a demanding machine, with aging structures and intricate systems that required many hours of inspection and repair. Heavy use in Afghanistan and Iraq accelerated fatigue and exposed system issues, leading to grounded periods, reduced low-level training, and early retirement for some airframes to protect the remainder of the fleet. The B-1B also no longer carries nuclear weapons, and against modern layered air defenses, it depends on standoff tactics, electronic warfare support, stealthier aircraft, and broader air superiority rather than the low-level dash profile imagined in the 1970s. Those limits mattered because the B-1B's original survivability assumptions belonged to a different era. Low-altitude speed and terrain masking had made sense against Cold War radar and missile networks, but modern integrated air defenses changed the risk calculation. Over time, tactics shifted toward using the bomber where air defenses had been suppressed, or from positions where standoff weapons could reduce exposure. The aircraft remained powerful, but it needed the rest of the joint force around it to be used wisely. The aircraft's evolution continued through upgrades rather than dramatic new variants. The B-1A and B-1B were the main members of the family, but the later aircraft changed steadily through conventional mission improvements, new radar modes, secure communications, towed decoys, compatibility with more precision weapons, and the integrated battle station upgrade that modernized cockpit displays and mission systems. More ambitious ideas, including fighter-like regional variants with different sensors and weapons, remained on paper. The real story was the steady conversion of a nuclear penetrator into a conventional workhorse.
Today, the B-1B holds a distinct place in American bomber history. It bridged the classic subsonic B-52 and the stealthy flying wing that followed, combining speed, payload, and advanced avionics in a platform that could be retasked in flight. Its heavy use in Afghanistan, Iraq, and later campaigns gave it a reputation as an on-call firepower provider rather than just a strategic symbol. For many troops on the ground, the distant rumble of a Lancer meant help was available. Its place in the bomber force is also a study in adaptation. The B-52 endured through payload, range, and constant modernization. The stealth bomber introduced a different path based on low observability. The B-1B sat between those worlds, built for speed and low-level penetration, but ultimately remembered for conventional flexibility. Its career shows that a weapon system's most important role is not always the one imagined when the first requirements were written.
The Lancer's story is now entering its final chapters. Structural wear, budget choices, and the arrival of a new stealth bomber have reduced the fleet, with some airframes retired to desert storage and others kept flying through careful life extension work. Several B-1 jets and the earlier B-1A ancestor are on public display at museums, bases, and air parks, while operational aircraft still fly from active bases with their distinctive engine howl. Its legacy lives in swept wings and weapons bays, but also in crews at 3 in the morning, maintainers coaxing one more sortie from an aging jet, and ground troops who heard that rumble and knew help was on the way.